All right. Lita says there's no sound. That's because my microphone was on mute. How dare my microphone be on mute? Thank you for the heads up, Lita. So here we will start over again. I've got Mac with me, and Mac is making some. He's walking around, making a little noise. So anyway, Lita, thank you for the heads up there, friends. Let's start over. Welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. And I am Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and faithful atheists. And Jesus was not afraid of questions, and neither are we here at One Question with Pastor Adam. So here we are asking the questions, and hopefully you can hear me now. If you can hear me now, say sound is back in the chat section. That would be helpful. So hopefully we're working now. So anyway, here we are on location, new time, new location. Here we are Fridays live at noon. Here at the church. I'm in the church office, so happy to be here. And thank you for coming along for the ride. Jeff says that you are hearing me okay now. So thank you for that, Jeff. All right. So today's question comes from someone who asked me this last week, told me this last week that their lifelong friend was struck with cancer a few months ago. And that was bad enough. But then she said just in the last few weeks that her husband also was struck with cancer. And so the question that she asked me was, what do I say in the face of such suffering? So today's question is what to say. What do I say to someone who is suffering? Could be suffering from depression, could be suffering from a health diagnosis, something like that. What do you say to someone who is suffering? So I would, if you've got comments, questions about this, I know there's always a lot of wisdom in our live show. So I'd love to hear your comments on this. I'm going to give you what I think is the best answer to what to say right here at the beginning of the episode. So after I say this, you can just stop watching, you can stop listening because this is it. No, I hope you stick around. Um, Here's what I want to invite you to do. I want to invite you to realize that probably the best thing that you can do when someone is suffering is to just show up. Just show up. Because the most important thing is not what you say. The most important thing is that you care enough to show up. So I hope that this takes some pressure off of you when you are in this situation. Because so often we enter into these situations when someone is suffering and we want to have the right words. We want to have the words that will fix the situation. But here's the thing, you don't have the right words. You don't. If you have been training your life for this and you're a therapist or a psychologist or something, you might have some really good words to say. But if you're like me, and if you're not a therapist or a psychologist, uh, oftentimes the most important thing to do is to just be present and to show up. In fact, sometimes our words just get in the way. Sometimes our words can just be problematic. And so in this episode, I'm going to talk about suggestions that you can say to someone in the situation, and also things that you might want to avoid saying in this situation. Okay, does that sound good? So Joshua says, running through the door. I am here. Good. Glad you are here, Joshua. Here are some kind of examples of what to say. And since I'm a pastor, let's start off with a biblical example of how this works. You may know that in the Bible there's a book called Job, spelled Job. Job. Job is a person, and Job has like everything that anyone could ever want in life: large family, wealth, all the things. And at some point, everything is taken away from Job. His children die, uh, tragedy strikes. Job is doing some really big suffering here. And Job ends up having three friends at first, and then a fourth friend comes. And all of those friends do something really important at the beginning of coming to see Job. They sit with him in silence. They don't talk. This is the ancient Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva. You show up, and there's no pressure to say anything. Silence is often the best thing that you can do, because when people are suffering, we feel alone. We feel like we're the only person here, and nobody is witnessing our suffering. And oftentimes, all we want is to have a witness, to have somebody show up and remind us that we're not alone. And that's what Job's friends do in the beginning. Where Job's friends get into trouble is when they try to find answers to Job's suffering, when they try to explain Job's suffering. You know, suffering, this kind of deep suffering, well, often any kind of suffering. Um, Sometimes there are no answers to it, and sometimes there are answers to it, but those answers aren't helpful. Like, okay, we can find the reasons that I got cancer, but I don't care about those reasons. I just want to know right now that I'm not alone and that somebody is here sitting in it with me. That's the key. And when Job's friends come and they try to provide answers or explanations, they just make Job feel worse. And that's partly because their explanations are often, well, their explanations are blaming Job for the situation that he is in. You've heard of blaming the victim. This is what Job's friends do to him. Their explanation is, Job, you must have sinned. You must have done something wrong. Just admit it, and then God will take away all of your suffering. Oh, really? Is that how it works? That's not how it works. It's not how it works. Job argues with his friends and says, hey, I'm not perfect, but I don't deserve this. And this is like where I've often talked about the strands within the Bible that have different meanings. This the academic word is the Bible doesn't speak univocally with one voice. The Bible has multiple voices. The Bible is a book full of books, 66 of them if you're a Protestant. And those books don't always agree on matters of faith. And so Job is a book that is bringing forth suffering as something that Job did not do to deserve. Whereas other books, you can read them and you can come to the conclusion that if people are suffering, it's because they did something wrong. This is seen in the book of Deuteronomy. If you're suffering, it's because you've sinned. And if you haven't suffered, or if life is going really great, it's because you're faithful and God is blessing you, right? You get that logic in the Bible too. Job is a book that just blows that out of the water. Job holds on to his innocence throughout the book. He argues with his friends. He demands that God show up and explain to Job why this is happening to him. And God doesn't give an explanation other than God is God and God can do whatever God wants to do. I hate the version of God in the middle of Job and at the beginning of Job too, but that's a different story. So the God character in Job is not my favorite. Just basically kind of makes a power play. Where were you, Job, when I put all of the worlds together? And where were you when I did all of this? There might be some kind of comfort in that people can have, but not for me. Not for me. I want a God who will not do a power play on me, but a God who will suffer with me. I want people who will not do a power play and try to explain my suffering. I want people to sit in my suffering with me. I would much prefer that. At the end of the book of Job, God comes to Job and his friends, and God says, Job, you were right the whole time. You didn't deserve this. Oh, that's the kind of God that I want. A God that is a witness to human pain, that enters into human pain and helps us know that we're not alone. And that's probably the Christian answer, if it is an answer, to suffering, is that God comes to us in Christ and suffers with us in order to let us know that we're not alone, that God is here with us in our pain and in our suffering. So that for me is kind of a biblical witness that I love to think about when it comes to how to meet people in their pain. I try to act like Job's friends at the beginning and not like Job's friends as they go along, to just sit and to be present. And this, I hope, actually does take pressure off of you to want to have the right words, because that's not what it's about. There are some things that, some guidelines maybe, that I want to offer you, of things to say, and then some things not to say. So here are some guidelines. If someone comes to you and says that they are suffering, or they have depression, or they have a friend who is struggling and they want to know what to say, uh, I think one of the things to recognize is that it's really quite an honor that someone would come to you and say that to you, because our culture does not do suffering and depression well. Our culture doesn't train us to be able to talk about these things very well. We often are trained actually in the opposite, to keep them inside, to bottle them up, because our culture is all about success and victory, and getting things accomplished, getting things done. And that leaves no room for talking about suffering, for talking about death, for talking about depression. So if someone comes to you and says that they are suffering in any of these ways, that's a big deal. That shows that they probably have a lot of trust in you. So congratulations for that. And one of the things that we can ask when someone comes to us with this kind of suffering is, would you like to talk about it? This is such a great question, because it's giving them permission to talk about it. Now, they may not want to talk about it. They may not be ready to talk about it. Oftentimes, in fact, when somebody first brings up that they are depressed or that they're suffering, they're they're sort of introducing the topic to you. They're introducing the situation to you. And they may not be ready to talk about it, but they're ready to introduce you to this situation in their life. And so the question of, would you like to talk about it, gives them space to either talk about it or to not talk about it. And if they're not ready to talk about it, you might just say, well, I just want you to know that I'm here for you. If ever or whenever you are ready to talk about it, I want you to know that I'm here. And I'd be happy to listen, to be here for you. So that's a good way to start off, being present with someone. And then I would encourage you to bring it up later if they haven't. And what I mean by that is, you can just say, "Hey, just want you to know that I'm thinking about you. Thinking about you." If they're religious, praying for you. Just want you to know that I'm here for you. That is a very powerful tool, because oftentimes people will bring it up and not want to talk about it immediately, and then we all feel a sense of shame because we're not trained to be able to deal with suffering and depression in our culture. And it's often a sense of shame that we have for even bringing it up to someone. And so that can stop us from talking about it again. And so just a quick text or phone call or a letter, just go old fashioned. People love getting letters, especially now that people aren't getting letters as much anymore. Oh, just like some act of communication that says, "Hey, I'm still thinking about you. I still care about you, and I'm here if you want to talk." Another thing you can do is ask if there's anything that you can do for them. Uh, in general, is there anything I can do for you? It's a great question to ask. And then you might add on at the end of that sentence, is there anything that I can do for you today? Oftentimes people, when we're suffering and depressed, oftentimes we're overwhelmed by the duties of the day, and even doing the laundry or making dinner can just feel so overwhelming. So you might ask, is there anything that I can do for you today? This makes it like specific about how can I help you get through the day, right? Can I order you dinner? Can I get dinner delivered to your house? Can I pay for somebody to do your laundry? Or can I come over and just do your laundry? Can I vacuum? Can I do your dishes? Things like that, just the practical stuff of the day. Because oftentimes when we're in this situation, it's just everything is just so overwhelming. So offering to help out in that way can be a really good thing to do. Don't be afraid to bring up depression or suffering. People are often. I was surprised to learn this when I was training to become a chaplain. Uh, don't be afraid to talk with someone who might be suicidal about suicidal ideations. You're not planting that into someone's head. In fact, when somebody is depressed, even to the point of being suicidal, they feel so alone. And having someone say, I are you depressed or you look depressed can be such a healing moment for someone. Uh, saying, uh, I'm worried that you might be suicidal can also be very healing to someone because it shows that somebody is witnessing my pain and somebody cares enough to talk to me about it. It can be very, very powerful. And one of the things that blocks us from having these conversations is our own fear of entering into that space with someone. So I would just encourage you to try not to be afraid of it. To try to just have, I don't know if it's courage, love, to be able to bring these things up because it can be life-saving for folks. As much as possible, here's I think this is my I should have been counting these. I think this is my sixth what you can say, what you can do. As much as possible, try to have a sense of unconditional positive regard for the other person. I first learned about this phrase when I was training to be a chaplain. It was first created by Stanley Standel in 1954, and then the great psychologist Carl Rogers started talking about it and popularized it. Basically, unconditional positive regard is the acceptance and support of a person, regardless of what the person says or does. If you can get to this level of unconditional positive regard for another person, despite what they say and despite what they do or despite what they have done, you are on another level. This is spiritual all-star stuff. This is godlike stuff. to have unconditional positive regard or unconditional love for another person, to have a non-judgmental presence. Oftentimes, sometimes people are depressed because of things that have happened to them in their past, and they may try to bring it up to you. And if you can respond with unconditional positive regard, that you love this person, no matter what they've done, no matter what they've left undone, boy, that's healing. Because underneath it all, I don't know. For me, underneath a lot of it is, am I worthy of being loved? And sometimes the answer in my head is no. And if I can be honest with someone and be like, this is it, this is me. Because I'm one of these people that likes to hide uh, a lot of who I am because I don't know if people will love me. Maybe you're like that too. And actually, let me rephrase that. There's a good chance that you are like this too. It's the human story. So if this is resonating with you, I try to hide some of myself because I don't know if I'm going to be loved if I show myself. That's the human story. You're not alone. You're not alone. So as much as we can, like, if you are friends with someone and they come to you with something like that, something like, I don't know if I'm worthy of being loved because of this, this, and this. Uh, boy, you have you have developed a lot of trust and a lot of love with this person. And again, congratulations, great work, great work on that kind of friendship. So if that happens, unconditional positive regard. And I mean, it's true that people often just need to get stuff off their chest. Uh, Feelings of guilt, feelings of anxiety about things, just need to get this off my chest. And guess what? That phrase has become cliche. I just need to get this off my chest because it's true. It's true about the human condition. We all have things on our chest that we need to take off of our chest. We all have that. It's there. So if you've got that, welcome to being human. Yeah. That's what it's about. So unconditional positive regard. Some things that you might think about to avoid saying are phrases like, well, yeah, you got cancer, but in the grand scheme of things, this is God's plan for you. Yeah, the God's plan stuff, try to avoid that. For some people, it might, if somebody brings that up to you and says, I just got this diagnosis and I think it's God's plan for me, you might say, tell me about that. What is your view of God in this situation? What's your relationship with God in this situation? That's how I would handle it because my theology does not at all in any way agree with that. That, oh, you got cancer, this is God's plan for you. That's a trigger for me. But I also realize that that can bring a lot of comfort to someone who is struggling in this situation. And so while it's a trigger for me, I can recognize that that's a trigger for me, but that's a trigger for me, not for this other person. For this other person, that may be something to explore. That may be something that provides comfort. And so I need to do what I can to take my feelings and triggers out of the situation and help this person explore what that means for them. So while I want to say, don't impose God's plan on others, if others feel like this is God's plan, be curious about it for them, right? Be curious about what that means for them and how that gives them comfort. Whew, man, that's hard to do. That's hard to do. Another phrase that you might want to avoid is something like everything is going to be okay. The sun will come up tomorrow, right? This is a way of minimizing someone's pain. And that's one of the minimizing someone's suffering and pain is one of the worst things that we can do. It's just makes it even worse. Um, some people will like in a way of trying to be helpful, will try to add perspective to the person's situation by comparing their suffering with someone else's suffering. Like, uh, do you ever think of the hungry children on the streets of the United States or hungry children on the other side of the world or people are being bombed in this country or that country? And so why are you so upset? Right? Suffering is not a competition. So try your best not to minimize someone's suffering. Perspective is a great thing, but not at this time. And the person who is suffering needs to get to that. If they're going to get to that kind of perspective, they need to get there on their own without us pushing them to get there before they are ready. When people have like done this perspective thing to me when I was really suffering, it shut me down from that person. I felt so minimized. I felt so little. I felt belittled by that kind of comment. Like, really, your suffering is not that big of a deal. Well, guess what? It was. Yeah, it is that big of a deal to me. And yes, I know that other people are suffering more, but this is me in my suffering now. Can you please meet me here and help me know that I'm not alone and not minimize it? That's ouch. Try to avoid saying, I know exactly how you feel. Because you don't. You don't know exactly how they feel. Try to avoid saying, oh, I had the same thing happen to me a couple years ago. I got through it just fine. You're going to get through it just fine. It's all good. Right? That's another way of minimizing other people. And it also shifts the focus from them and their suffering onto you. It comes from a good place, another place of trying to give perspective. But to say, I know exactly how you feel, this happened to me, is very minimizing and shifts the focus away from them and puts it back onto you. So when you like tell a story about how you went through a similar situation and you know exactly how they feel, that's it's often not helpful. There can be a place for it. So I just want to encourage you to be very careful, very careful with that one. Um, Another one is try not to give unsolicited advice. Again, unsolicited advice comes from a good place of wanting to help, but unsolicited advice uh, often puts us in a place of superiority to the other person. It often says, I know the answer to this, and you are too stupid to know the answer to this. That's how unsolicited advice often comes up. There's a sense in which it's important to trust that this person has the tools to get through what they are going through, and also to be there with them in case you can help them with those tools. One assumption that I try to make is that everybody already has the things within them to get through this situation. And if I can be there to support them as they go through this situation, that might just be my role. And by support, it's again, what can I do to help you? And sometimes we think that we already know what we can do to help someone. And then we impose our answers of what they need for help onto them. And that can often also not be very helpful at all. So asking what you can do to help them get through this is good. Don't try to fix the person. People are not objects to be fixed. They are humans to be loved. We are humans to be present with. Sometimes when this is really hard because I don't know if it's a man thing or a person thing, but oftentimes we want to avoid going into someone's suffering because we want to fix it. And sometimes really underneath all of it, we know that this is not something that can be fixed. And so we avoid it because we're scared of feeling helpless or hopeless in that situation. And I just constantly need to remind myself that as much as like I'm a man and I'm supposed to have the answers and I'm supposed to be able to fix things, people are not a burned out light bulb that you can just take the light bulb out and then put in a new light bulb and boom, you fixed it. It's not about how being human works. Sometimes you just got to sit with the burned out light bulb. And that's very uncomfortable and it can be scary. But sometimes you just got to sit with it. I think the last thing that I want to talk about is the dangers of empathy. Empathy is like, a big buzzword, and it's good to be empathic. It's good to have empathy for people, but there's a danger to empathy as well. It's, putting on another person's shoes. It's important to do that in a sense in which I think we all understand. But it's also important to recognize that these are not your shoes. These are their shoes. That distinction is important for your mental health as you enter into suffering with other people. These are not your shoes. These are their shoes to wear. And it's also important for other people to know that they already know that these are their shoes. Empathy can be dangerous because when you're so empathic with another person and you're so in their shoes, this is another way where we can start to make it not about them, but about us. And so our emotions can start to boil over. And pretty soon we are so sad and we're suffering so much with this other person that this other person starts to think, okay, now I need to be supportive of my friend as they are suffering because I am suffering. Does that make sense? That's where empathy can go overboard. There's a sense, I think, of differentiation, which I'm trying to get at here. You are not this person. You are different from this person, and that person has this path to walk, and they need to walk it, and you can journey with them for a while, but you are not called to journey with them all the time, forever and ever on this path of suffering. There are other people in this world who can journey with them too. This is not all about you. You are not the savior of this person. That's putting too much on you. So let this person fill their own shoes. You can put their shoes on for a while, but let them have their shoes back. They need their shoes back in order to grow from this, experience this, get through this, hopefully. But these are not your shoes to wear. These are their shoes to wear. And of course, along with that is make sure you're doing a lot of self-care for yourself. I think I often hear of people who are who are going through a lot of suffering, whether it's individual suffering or whether it's nations that are being bombed, going through genocide, um, all of these different scales of suffering. Oftentimes, people will say in those situations, they will say, please enjoy your life. Please don't let my suffering stop you from enjoying your life because someone needs to enjoy this life. Please let it be you. And also, as I'm saying this, please also recognize that when people are suffering in these individual scales or larger scales, also know that there is joy. People can experience joy in suffering as well. Life is a constant mixture of joy and suffering, of mixed emotions. And so if you see someone who's going through a really hard time and they start like laughing and enjoying life, just be like, yeah, this is life, right? Uh, it's full of surprises. It's full of mixtures of emotions, and don't let don't 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 do. I hope this sounds okay, and I'm still learning, so maybe this isn't the right thing to say. But don't participate in the suffering Olympics, right? We don't need to do that. Like you, for a time, we can take on other people's suffering, and we can suffer for the world and where it's at. But there's a place for joy in this world too. So that can come from self-care. It can come from, I don't know, how do you do self-care, right? Um, go get a massage. It's okay to get a massage. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to dance while there's so much suffering. It's okay to do these things. You have permission. So, okay. I'm gonna stop talking. So, I know we've got some wisdom in the comments, so let's go to it. So, Jessica says sometimes people are in the dark and don't know it because the light bulb is out. If you go in trying to fix the problem, it can get in the way of them discovering what the problem is. Oh, I love that, Jessica. Yeah. I was in when I was in becoming a chaplain, there was someone that I was visiting in the hospital, and they described themselves as being in this pit. Like somebody had dug a hole and pushed them in the pit, and it was dark and they couldn't see anything. And I thought this was this was my learning experience as a chaplain. I thought it was my job to go in there and to shed some light in the situation. That wasn't my job. That wasn't my job. I learned later from my mentor, that's not your job, Adam. And oftentimes, as Jessica, you're saying, like the light bulb has gone out. If you just go in there and you start putting in a light bulb and you turn on the light, that's going to hurt even more, right? You got to have time to adjust to the light bulb. And if you hit people with the light bulb too soon, it's not helpful. So, love the light bulb, Jessica, metaphor there. Thank you. So, uh, Imelda says, explore the person's coping skills and sustain their personal agency. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's you're Imelda, you're getting at the tools that I was trying to talk about. Everybody already has tools inside of them to get through whatever it is that they're going through. That's the assumption that I have. And Imelda, this is perfect. Explore the person's coping skills and sustain their personal agency. That's it. Imelda, thank you. Putting putting words in my mouth for the explanation of what I'm trying to say. So excellently done. Thank you for that. Princess, glorious afternoon to you. Joshua says, as aforementioned, again, in my humble opinion, emotional availability is a lost skill. Unconditional love and loving presence require emotional bonds and availability. Oh, if we could, how do we produce a culture that fosters skills of emotional availability? Uh, it's taken me years of therapy to overcome emotional unavailability to help myself be a little more emotionally available. If we could if we could create more of that in our culture, that would be awesome. Joshua says, additionally, in my humble opinion, if you lack support, make an effort to contribute in a positive way and show that you care about the person you care about. This is the thing that God is all about. It is a significant thing. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, we put so much pressure on ourselves to say the right thing, uh, that we often don't show up. And as we're concluding this episode, we can also put so much pressure on ourselves to try to not say the wrong thing that we don't show up. Because what can I say in the face of such suffering? I hope I don't say the wrong thing. I hope I don't say something that triggers this person uh, and makes it even worse. Oh, my friends, just like if we could just take that pressure off of ourselves and just remind ourselves that, man, the most important thing is to just show up and say, I'm thinking about you, I'm here for you, and develop the tools, as Imelda is getting at, to help people realize the tools that they already have inside of themselves, and to be able to talk about those tools and to talk about their situation with someone who is non-judgmental and loving. That's powerful. And just and is able to listen and to sit in the situation with them for a time. That's that's powerful stuff. Jessica says we call Carl Rogers Uncle Rogers in my program. Love him. Have you ever seen, I'm sure I know Jessica, you have, but have you ever seen Carl Rogers in action? If you go on YouTube and just put in Carl Rogers, unconditional positive regard. Oh man, just watching Uncle Rogers, not Mr. Rogers, Uncle Rogers, although watching Mr. Rogers is healing too, but just watching Uncle Rogers um, talk with people and engage with people and show that kind of unconditional positive regard to another person. He was doing this in the 60s, 70s, I think into the 80s. I think there are some videos of him in the 80s. It's just very powerful stuff. Why not say, and Joshua says, why not to say and what to avoid, what not to say and what not to avoid while holding empathy, compassion for a suffering person is a real task. Yeah, that's that's a good spiritual practice, good spiritual, high spiritual level. So, furthermore, it is advisable to decide whether you are available to share in someone else's suffering if you lack bandwidth. Yeah, um, there, the world is a tough place, and sometimes it's an excellent point of wisdom there, Joshua. Sometimes we don't have the bandwidth to enter into someone's suffering. And sometimes we just need to take a step back. And that's an important part of self care, to realize I'm not at a place where I can do this. And I may end up doing more harm than good. And if you are in a place like that, that's a good sign that you might need some help yourself, right? You might need some help in recognizing the tools to do some self care for yourself. So, yeah, thank you for that. That's a great point, Joshua. Okay, those are a lot of the comments today. Yeah. So Jeff has, I think, the last comment says engineers have trouble not fixing things. Whew, yeah, I'm not an engineer, but as a pastor, there, and I would imagine as therapists, there is a lot of pressure to try to fix things. One of the things that I love about my therapist is that he doesn't try to fix me. If he tried to fix me, I would feel like he viewed me as an object to be fixed. If he tried to fix me, I would feel like I was just another one of his project clients, uh, that he could fix and then move on from. "Oh, you're all fixed, Adam." Guess what? I'm not fixed. I don't think in this life I will ever be fixed, and I'm okay with that. I think in this life, I'm gonna have issues for the rest of my life, and I'm gonna need therapy for the rest of my life, and as I'm saying that, I'm sure, well, maybe someone might be thinking, "Well, that's sad. You're never gonna be fixed." I don't think it's sad. I think it's human. We all deal with issues in our lives, and if my therapist was trying to fix me, I would I might be offended. How dare you try to fix me? Just just let me talk. Just as Imelda says, let me let's develop the tools that I have already inside of me. Make them a little sharper. Help me to recognize them easier as we move through this world. And just because like I'm never going to be completely fixed doesn't mean that I can't enjoy this life with my loved ones, with all of you, right? Hope that makes sense. Okay. Raylene says savior complex is often part of the programming of evangelicals. The big picture is we are always and in all ways on the journey of becoming. That's good. I like how you said that, Raylene. That's good. Jeff says we had our dogs fixed. Well, I suppose you can fix your dog. I had Mac fixed too. So Joshua says a fixed human being seems downright frightening. Yeah, I I will avoid fixed human beings. Somebody comes to me and says I'm fixed. I'm running the other way. So that's good. Joshua, advice on mental health from an engineer would worry me. Oh, I love you people. You are fantastic. Let's see. Did we get all the comments? I think so. Oh, Jessica says I've heard the journalist Bison say to enjoy life and to fight for the Palestinians, which is probably more sustainable if we enjoy what we can. Thank you, Jessica. I've heard the journalist Bison say to enjoy life and to fight for Palestinians, which is probably more sustainable if we enjoy what we can. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That's what I got for you for today, friends. If thank you for joining the live show and for all of your comments, and I thank you for being here as we switch to Fridays at noon Pacific to have these conversations, and we'll do it again next Friday at noon. And if you are listening to the podcast, special shout out to you. Thank you. If you are on a podcast platform and you can rate, review the show, that would be awesome, especially if you have nice things to say. And give me 5-star review. Thank you for that. That would be fantastic. So help get the word out. So thank you for being here, friends. It's always a joy to have these conversations with you and to read your comments and be in conversation with all of you. So thank you for this, and we'll do it again next week. Until then, God be with you.